It took me years to go back to the movie theaters, but this week I went twice. Let me tell you why you should absolutely watch Project Hail Mary in the movie theaters right now. Since this is my review, I will first give you a spoiler-free section, and then I will give you a clear spoiler warning before continuing my review. Project Hail Mary was released in 2026 and it's a science fiction film based on the 2021 novel of the same name by Andy Weir. A science teacher awakens alone aboard a distant spacecraft with no memory of his identity or how he arrived there. As fragments of his past resurface, he realizes he's been sent to solve a deadly mystery threatening the sun using his scientific expertise and unconventional thinking. In the process, an unforeseen bond forms, suggesting he may not have to face the mission in isolation. This movie could single-handedly save cinemas. Let me tell you the first thoughts I had while watching it for the first time, because the sound design caught me off guard. It was close to perfection. There were literally 2 songs towards the end that I didn't really like. The simple fact that I can recall exactly the couple of things I didn't enjoy as much as everything else should tell you something. But even the fact that I noticed the volume, the rhythm, the mood of each part of the score is positive. Simply because after years of video editing, it's something I pay attention to compared to a few years back when I didn't have to think of what would suit a certain scene. And as I was watching it, I was thinking, what do you mean you can jump from pata pata to the final bell so smoothly, all perfectly merging with original tracks that left me beyond amazed. But it's not just the sound, which actually could come second or even third, because the visuals are impeccable. And the closest thing I watched to this with such a vibrant and meaningful use of color was foundation. Highly recommended, as you can tell from these videos I made. If you missed it, go watch it now. But this is what we want from cinema. Colorful shots, visible scenes, compared to the recent trend on streaming platforms mainly, in which some of us can barely see what's happening because it's literally too dark. That's how it's shot. Comment below if you've ever struggled to see a scene on Netflix or Prime Video, for example. And this is true for the audio too. Here, in Project Hail Mary, I could hear everything clearly, both the dialogues and the score. And this is how a film should be made. Everybody else, please take note. This film has the same cinematographer from Dune, yet I did not like Dune. I mean, the visuals were literally the only reason why I kept watching both movies. And I cannot stand Timothée Chalamet, so that may have played a role, I guess. But I'm not a real fan of Dune. The point is that if you loved the visuals in Dune, you will be thrilled while watching Project Hail Mary. If you are not convinced yet, just know that the readers of the book overall loved the adaptation. This will go down in history as one of the best adaptations. A huge plus is that the author did tons of research and made the science in this film and in this book real. Not only realistic, but real. But this movie is great even if you don't like sci-fi. It's deeply human. It's even suitable for children. There's no need for anything sexual, anything explicit, which is something I recently mentioned in a different video. And I really praise it for this. No need for profanities or anything that could hurt anybody. Now, go get your ticket, watch the movie, and come back later because we need to talk. Spoiler warning from now on. Alright, back to the visuals. The space is not just grim and empty like you can see in countless sci-fi movies and shows. Here, a bright and colorful atmosphere can be deadly, not bad per se, because the production and I assume the author too wanted us to perceive the stark contrast between stunning colors and shapes shown to us during a terrifying moment when we experience sheer fear for our beloved protagonists. I cannot tell you how pleased I was to see the Northern Lights on a different planet. I cried just like I did when I saw them with my own eyes from my balcony back in Finland. The powerful image of the biggest challenge yet, accompanied by such a striking background, is unforgettable. Some people said it was the best scene they had ever seen in a cinema. A detail that some people might have missed because maybe they are not used to notice these things, but as I said with the sound, now I start to notice transitions and video editing too, which is why I loved the rotating transitions between scenes from the past and the present. So every time we had a flashback. And these were mimicking the ship's movement to create gravity and the initial confusion of the main character, as he has no memory of how or why he got there in that spacecraft in the first place. The first time I watched this movie, I wanted to stay until the very end of the credits, but we were basically forced to leave. They kicked us out. That's insane to me, but I wondered if it's now standard practice or something. There must be some reason why they kick you out while the credits are still rolling. I don't know, because as I said, I hadn't been to a cinema, specifically to movie theaters in Italy, for so many years. I don't remember, maybe 6 or 7 years. I had been once in Finland, but that was a whole different experience. So I wasn't sure why. And there were no shows after that one because that was the last show of the night. So I couldn't see everything in the credit scenes. Luckily I went twice. But I took note of my thoughts and feelings right after the first time I watched it. But it felt as if I was the only one who recognized real nebula shots throughout the second half of the credits. Just so it's clear, all my devices have one of JWST or Hubble's photos in the background, and then after watching it the second time, chatting with fellow enthusiasts on Threads, I found out that it's actual astrophotography by this astrophotographer, and you can find him on Instagram and Threads. Shout out to him for his work and for allowing us to enjoy these incredible pieces of art. I watched the movie in Italian because that's the only thing that is available right now, right here where I am. And we don't even have IMAX. I found out we don't have IMAX in Italy, not where I live. There are only 6 in the whole country, and nothing is close to me. So the best I could do was to watch it in 4K, which is what I did the second time around. However, if you have watched it in English, you may have noticed a far superior portrayal of an alien compared to others. And I believe we have to thank a fine puppeteer, James Ortiz, for voicing Rocky. Kudos for not hiring a so-called famous actor, as they wanted to originally, but trusting experience instead and giving this part to a puppeteer. As you can tell by watching the movie, it is worth it. Something I truly miss nowadays is a reason to care while watching a movie. Because in here, the stakes are high. You can feel it all the time. In every single shot, you can feel the stakes are high. It's also a comedy, so it can be lighthearted at times. But you do care. It's important. We have a mission. Whereas in recent releases, you often have characters who die and then somehow come back to life. Or we have multiple universes and you can just eliminate one character and take a new one from a different universe. Don't get me wrong, parallel universes were a cool trope until Marvel made it. I mean, until Marvel decided to include parallel universes in their plots, and I think they really messed up. For everybody else, just a random thought. The point is that here the stakes are high, and this is one of many reasons, as you will see, why this is a masterpiece. This movie has potential to grow a fan base, not only because it's a beautiful and faithful adaptation of a beloved novel, but also thanks to inside jokes. There's plenty. When I got the chance to see it, the movie had been out for 1 week or so, and Threads was already flooded by comments such as 2 thumbs down. Fist my bump, which is a super cool expression that Rocky could have fixed after the first time Grace corrected him, but he learned and kept joking. Since we're here, can we please talk about the language? If you don't know, I'm a linguist. So this is my cup of tea. The syntax used by Rocky at times is opposite to most languages spoken in the world, and this is emerging in social media too. This phenomenon has the same power as the Esperanto expressions and word order in Star Wars, along with Yoda's language, just to name 2 cases in pop culture, which are not even relegated to nerd groups. Rocky's alterations to Grace's syntax have the exact same potential and are far more memorable than anything we observed in Arrival with the heptapods, for example, which is a pity, I must say. I will link below several resources and specifically videos I watched right after seeing it for the first time, and these are videos made by people I follow already. I just watch their videos regularly, and I had to save those videos for the moment I could finally see the movie. There's a neat detail I learned while watching Joe Scott's video with Andy Weir, the author of the novel, which is that Rocky doesn't have to memorize the location of elements around him because he can see them at all times, as opposed to us, since humans are unable to see beyond their eyesight and are forced to store this kind of information to avoid falling or bumping into objects. This reminds me of different systems we use to talk about space, spatial cognition, how we are positioned in space, how we define north, east, south, west, and how we mentally portray this spatial awareness. This varies in different cultures, speaking distant languages. I have a couple of examples here. See, for example, New Zealand English versus Brazilian Portuguese. Our results show that New Zealand English uses a wider range of spatial relation terms, e.g. beside, and reference objects, e.g. river, than Brazilian Portuguese. That Brazilian Portuguese uses more projective spatial relation terms than New Zealand English, which prefers directional terms, and that translation between spatial relation terms is context dependent. And another example is an Australian language that makes essential use of terms for cardinal directions. There are 4 root expressions, as in our Western compass points, but the roots label edges, id-est quadrants, rather than points, despite which they will simply be glossed here as north, etc., and are skewed about 17 degrees clockwise from our magnetic or grid directions. You see what I mean? This is a really neat detail, and the author thought about it. The way the Iridian's brain works allows for immediate memorization. They hear a word once and learn it, whereas we need repetition. And if we create connections or learn a new word while laughing, we learn it better and faster so that we can better store it in our memory. This affects their speech as well as ours. Rocky's language is a multi-tonal language, and there's even a possibility of having multiple discussions at once. I'm telling you, the author went above and beyond, and I could watch a whole deep dive, a whole other separate movie about this. Andy Weir describes Rocky as if a beehive had legs and could move. This made me think of a project that I am part of. It's called Afrobee. Linguists, but also anthropologists and biologists are getting together in an interdisciplinary effort to study beekeeping in Africa. I'm specifically involved in the language of beekeeping, and there are so many things we don't know about our own planet. So many languages that have never been analyzed, transcribed, or compared yet. But the more we research, the more we can put two and two together, or even discover the most surprising and unpredictable reality hidden here on Earth. This is why I absolutely loved the astrophage and the fact that we cannot see these particles. They are beyond our limits, our ability to interact with the world around us. As the directors said, they had to remove a filter from the camera to capture the astrophage. They did it with infrared, for real, and to render what we cannot see and could potentially be there in our reality. It's thanks to the efforts of projects like Afrobee or an astrophysicist like Dr. Becky that we can describe and comprehend this world, galaxy, and universe. Another fascinating cultural aspect of the Iridians is guarding each other while sleeping, as they are effectively paralyzed. Just like eating, it's an activity for which I'm sure they would have an array of terms, taboos, and vastly different vocabulary from our languages, as both activities are fundamentally distinct and cannot be compared to ours. Just like some languages have 50 different terms for snow compared to Hadza, which is a hunter-gatherer language spoken in Tanzania, in which you have a vast lexicon around hunting, arrows, and bows, which you wouldn't have in Finland, for example. I did not expect to laugh so hard. I had to contain myself. When I heard the Wild Signals reference from Close Encounters of the Third Kind, I wanted to point at the screen. Such a simple yet clever way to homage a sci-fi classic. One of the pioneers of first contact movies back in 1977. The main character was so relatable, yet a plausible first-time astronaut. Science teachers finally got the attention they deserve. Side note, my mother was a science teacher, now she is retired. When the head of the task force mentioned a thesis Grace wrote years prior, I could feel his reaction in my bones. I have the same rejection towards my PhD's topic, even though I never reached his level or got into controversies for it. But the feeling of this creation you once loved and cherished, but now hide, is too relatable. Well done. I can even understand why he would rather teach to children, not only because he's clearly passionate about it, which was exciting to see as well. A fun fact I just learned about while watching Dr. Becky's and Joe Scott's videos is that Erid and Vulcan are neighbors, which made my Trekkie brain really happy. And since I've been obsessing, of course, right after watching the movie the first time and the second time, and honestly, if I could, I would go a third time, I've been on Threads way more than usual. So let me share some gems that I found, and I totally agree with some of these. For example, this user wrote, "The most unrealistic part of the whole story is not that a sentient, non-water-based race of intelligent life exists, but that when confronted with irrefutable science proving Earth was going extinct, Earthlings banded together to do whatever they could to solve the problem, and a woman was handed the reins to all the power she'd need to accomplish our salvation without abusing it." And I mean, isn't that true? By the way, Artemis 2 is launching as I'm filming this right now. which is quite exciting. Here's another relatable comment. Project Hail Mary surprised me from the very beginning. I expected a familiar sci-fi setup, but the film delivered a thoughtful and emotionally grounded story that blends scientific ideas with genuine human depth. Its exploration of resilience, empathy, and connection across different forms of life feels sincere and visually striking, supported by focused direction and strong performances. Overall, it is a clean, heartfelt, and refreshingly confident piece of science fiction. I couldn't agree more. And this is what I meant by even those who loved the book and maybe were afraid of watching the movie are probably pleased with it. See, for example, Project Hail Mary is the kind of book adaptation people who dread adaptations are always hoping for. It's a story about self-preservation versus preservation of the species, logic versus instinct, survival of the individual versus survival of everything, and it asks a hard question. When those conflict, which one actually wins? Because everyone likes to believe they'd choose logic, that they would be the unwavering brave hero, until that survival instinct hits hard. And here's something else I wanted to point out, but this is even clearer on Threads. A tiny detail, but I find it endearing, that Rocky puts himself last in things that he says, like Grace, Rocky, save stars, save Earth, save Erid. And a comment reads, I think that's part of Iridian culture. Even in the book, Rocky wanted Grace to cultivate all the Tau Meba for Venus first and then proceed with the one for Third World. It's Venus. And here is something that I praise and I will keep praising, is the use of practical effects plus VFX at the end, but nothing was filmed on a green screen, for example. See here, Project Hail Mary was 1,000 times better because the filmmakers relied on practical effects over CG as much as possible, taking a moment to celebrate James Ortiz, the puppeteer who brought Rocky to life. And I absolutely loved the detail that Andy Weir shared, and the directors too, I think, is that the whole team of puppeteers, because it wasn't just one person. I mentioned him already because of the voice, he was voicing Rocky, but there was a whole team and they were called the Rocketeers, which is genius. The problem is that I could go on for hours on end. If you're still here, it means you watched the movie, I hope. And in that case, I want to hear your opinion. I need to talk to someone because this movie is so rich. There's so much we can discuss. And if you read the book, of course, feel free to add everything you enjoyed and that they couldn't possibly fit in, such as all the detailed science, but also how you felt or how was the experience with IMAX, if you can put it into words. This is peak cinema. I am beyond happy. I'm happy. Here's another construction that actually exists in certain languages that is used in Rocky's language. The repetition, and in his case there are 3 words that are repeated. Fun fact, since I watched it in Italian, I didn't hear amaze. I just read it all over the place on social media. But in Italian, they translated into meraviglia, which is more or less marvel, wonder. And it doesn't really sound good because it's too long, it's too complex as a word, too many different sounds, and it really sounds bad. If I repeat it 3 times, it's difficult. I mean, you should try. Meraviglia. But there are so many tiny details I'm sure I missed because I couldn't watch it in the original language. And I cannot wait for them to put it somewhere where I can get it and watch it on repeat. Because, I mean, I need the score. Luckily, that's available already on YouTube. I couldn't believe the use they made of percussions, the actual beat in certain moments in which you would expect a completely different sound. Because normally you don't hear that sound on top of a scene in which two starships are rotating. That's not when you would expect that kind of beat. And then when it paused, that was so brilliant. The use of sound plus silence. Oh my god. This was such a masterpiece. I don't have any words left. And that's for the better because this video is gonna be long. Please do share your opinions, your thoughts, why it was exciting. If you made a crochet or any other kind of creation based on this movie, a little Earth, a little Rocky, share it with me on social media because I need to see it. And now that you watched this, check out the video on the screen. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss my upcoming videos. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.